joined so far, welcome to our session today. We're glad that you've joined. And I know we'll have a few more coming in here in the next couple minutes. But we'll start with some introductions and then we'll really just jump in. So I'm Hannah Curtis. I'm a coordinator with the North Metro Small Business Development Center. And we're joined by our presenter today, Courtney Berg, owner of Courtside Consulting and a consultant with several of the SBDCs. So we're really happy to have her expertise and talk about a really hot topic that we all need to be talking about right now, the hiring issue. So Courtney will have some material to present to us, but we also want this to be very interactive and hear from all of you about what you're seeing and the issues that you're facing. So there'll be times where you are encouraged to speak up, or you can always use the chat feature to type in questions. And then we can send out this recording later as well, so you have the material to refer back to. So Courtney, I will turn it over to you.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Hannah. And thanks to the North Metro SBDC for having me today. It's wonderful to be here. I see some familiar names on the pictures there, so it's nice to have everybody here. And I know we'll have some other people join in. We're talking about hiring today, and it's just not what it used to be. So I used to be a recruiter for a national insurance organization, and people would beat our door down to get a recruiting spot. And I don't know if anybody's seeing that right now. That's not what I'm experiencing when I'm talking to my clients. People are not beating doors down at this point. I think, ghosting was not a thing when I used to recruit, and it definitely is now. And everybody wants to get in and wants to have that conversation about hiring, and yet it's so difficult to find the candidates to talk to. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be talking about a variety of things to help you on the hiring side. And after that, we're going to be talking about some things that you can control, things that you actually will have some control over in your organization, and that will allow you to better be ready, I guess, for the hiring, and hopefully to keep the employees you have right now. So let's just get started and see what's going on with hiring. So our agenda today is we're going to be talking about what's going on. We're going to look at some statistics, current statistics in Colorado, current federal statistics around unemployment. We're going to talk about the Great Resignation. We're hearing about it. Is that really a thing? Is that something we need to be worried about? Where can we find candidates? Where on earth are the candidates? And we're hearing about the unemployment statistics. We see them, we see numbers, but where can we find those candidates? And then I want to dive into what's your most important question, and that's going to help bring the control back to you. So let's look at those federal unemployment stats right now. And this is national unemployment rates from 2008 through 2021. And right now we're sitting at, for October, 4.5% unemployment. Now, what we're seeing is that the pandemic obviously shot it up. So if you look at April in 2020, it was up to 14.8, and then it started coming down slowly. And we're seeing that continue to decrease ever since that 14.8 high in April of 2020. So the federal unemployment rate is coming down. It's 14.6 in October. What's going on in Colorado? Well, in Colorado right now, we're at a 5.6 unemployment rate overall. And I thought, well, that's interesting, but how does that really play into the people that are on this call? What does that look like in your particular counties? So I broke it down. If you look on the left-hand side of these unemployment rates, you're going to see the highest unemployed counties, the highest unemployment numbers in counties in Colorado. So Pueblo is at 7%, Warfano's at 6.5, and it goes down from there. On the right-hand side are the counties that are in the surrounding areas of the North Metro SBDC. So that information is there. Adams County is at the highest with 5.5. If you don't see the county that you are familiar with or that you're in and you want information on, I received this information or got it online from the Coloradoan. And so you can look at the Coloradoan and then just call up your county and be able to see what your county unemployment numbers are. So really, what's going on? I was reading a Forbes article not too long ago, and they were talking about the Great Reassessment. I think the pandemic caused all of us, uh, at least many of us, to really reassess, what do we want in life? What are we doing? We all, like, everything dropped and we went home and we stayed at home, and we had the opportunity to really reassess what's going on and what puzzle pieces we wanted to put back into our life. Are we happy? Are we fulfilled? What's important to us? All of those questions are being asked by your employees and probably by you. It was really a time, the pandemic allowed us a time to reflect as to what we wanted. And so when we started putting those puzzle pieces back together, with each piece that we had in our hand, we decided, do we want to put this puzzle piece back, or do we want to throw it away? And so some pieces got left out. And that's where we really start to see people resigning, because they realized they don't want to work anymore. That work piece is not fitting into their life anymore. And so we're seeing more and more people go through that resignation process. So that's causing the great resignation. It's causing us to look at our retirement. Wow, I'm getting close to retirement. I'm going to retire. I don't like this job. I'm going to move into something else. So it's like all of us were having a crisis, if you will, if you want to call it that, and looking at the most important things in our life, and then stepping back and saying, okay, I don't want to work anymore. Well, what's happening now? What do the surveys say are going on now? In looking at some surveys, I found that in the next 12 months, 55% of Americans surveyed by bank rate, and this is from August of 2021, 55% of the Americans surveyed are planning to leave their job in the next 12 months. So when you think about your staff, if that fits into national averages of Americans that were surveyed, 55% of your staff could leave in the next 12 months. Now, that's not a very comforting thought. Microsoft learned that 41% globally, 41% of the workers globally are looking to leave their jobs. 74% of the people surveyed are reevaluating their current work situation according to LinkedIn. And the biggest reason is stress and burnout. So as people leave, the people that are there are going to get more stressed and more burned out. So it's a compounding problem. I did find that retailers, I think they have the highest rate of difficulty in filling positions. So 94% of the retailers out there are having difficulty filling positions. And we can see that. We can see that because we go to stores and sometimes they're closed. We can, see that they're short-staffed. So it's important to keep in mind that everybody's experiencing this. It's just the reality of our work situation right now. People are just saying, I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm leaving. So what we're experiencing globally, what we're experiencing in Colorado, is that these people are leaving and not looking back. They are moving on to other things. So we must, as employers, expect our workforce to leave. Maybe, I don't know, more than half of the people you have on your staff right now won't be here next year. So one of the most important things that we can be looking at is, what am I doing to keep these people, and why are they leaving? What's causing them to leave? In the past, we could have looked at something and said, we can pay them a fair wage. We're going to give them some training. We're going to give them a desk and, a computer, and we're all good. But that's not the case anymore. The employers now are really looking for work-life balance. They stayed at home. They had their kids next to them as they were working from their desk from home and working on Zoom. They had flexible work hours. So even though they were supposed to work certain times of the day, they might change those times based on when their meetings are. And then all of a sudden they had some free time during the day to be with the kids or to go shopping or to do the laundry and still get their work done, right? They enjoyed remote work. They enjoyed that option for remote work. They really looked at it as developmental, there were developmental opportunities, and those developmental opportunities allowed them to learn a new skill. and so some people are saying, wow, okay, I've got this new skill, and they're talking to their employer about that new skill, and the new employer or the employer is saying, well, that new skill is great, but that has nothing to do with us. And they're not incorporating that. And so those folks are saying, oh, but I like that new skill. So I'm going to go find a job where I can use that new skill. So that's part of the problem as well. Compensation, the whole pay and benefits packages, people are looking at that. I'm seeing signs at McDonald's where they're paying $18 an hour. That's becoming more and more commonplace, 15 or above, far above what the statewide minimum wage is. And so compensation is becoming an issue as well. Okay. Throughout our meeting today, we're going to have little let's talk sessions. And what I want to do in these sessions is actually just open up the microphones and have some feedback from you about what was just discussed, or items that you have questions about, but really open up the dialogue. This really is, let's talk about hiring and let's talk about what's going on with our people. So open up your mics if you would, and talk to me a little bit about the statistics that we talked about, or what you're seeing where you are in your neck of the woods with your employees.
I would say, Courtney, that what you mentioned about people dropping out and reassessing their situation is very, very true. That's just from personal observation of talking with a variety of individuals. And you can just sense what's going on out there. So I'm in recruiting, and I'm trying to figure out how that's going to be, how I can help out with that or leverage that. And a very evolving landscape, let's say.
It is, right? It is an evolving landscape. And even though we're seeing these unemployment numbers that are higher, not as high as at the beginning of the pandemic, but they're still higher than they were pre-pandemic, we're not seeing the candidates, right? We're not seeing the candidates beating our doors down or trying to get a job. They're being very selective.
I think a lot have dropped out as well.
I'm sorry, say that again, Kevin.
I think a lot of people have dropped out as well. Like they're, oh, well, I'm getting by. I'm not. I don't need to work now. I'm just, I'm going to take it easy and watch Netflix until things settle down or something. They're just not interested in working.
Yeah, they're taking a gap year, is what I call it. Like they're saying, okay, I don't want to go straight back to work. I'm going to stay at home and I'm going to relax a little bit, and I'm going to de-stress. And stress is, we just lived through a pandemic. It's still going on, and that stress level is very high, and we can see it in our youngest kids all the way to our oldest adults. Everybody is dealing with a level of stress. And so if people can step out of the workforce and take some time off and just breathe for a little bit, they are doing it. You're absolutely right.
Courtney, this is John.
Hi, John.
From the standpoint of the manufacturing sector, which is what I primarily consult with, there's two things that are important, and you had mentioned a couple of them. Compensation, number one. And I'm telling you, if you have any kind of technical skill, or you're trying to hire anybody with technical skills, you can't touch them for less than $20 to $22 an hour. Period. That's just the name of the game. That's where the competition is. Those clients that I have, and I've got 30-some clients, those that are successful have built a strong culture of good communication and training. So if I'm an applicant and I can see that there's opportunity for me to learn a skill, whether I apply it at that particular firm or somewhere else, that's going to be attractive. So those are the things that I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's good. So communication and training, are you seeing that as being more valued than the compensation piece, or are they equally valued? What are you seeing as far as priorities, if you will, for candidates that are looking at manufacturing?
I think they're equal, Courtney, to tell you the truth. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know if you're going to get into this at all or not, but how you set up your recruiting ad that, with a lot of emphasis on well, comp and benefits, but also training. intern programs, whatever you want to call it, it does get their attention because again, it gets back to, yes, I can learn a skill. If I stay here or don't stay here, I still have that skill. And I think they're equal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what we're experiencing. The tenure at companies used to be a lot longer than it was even, 3 years ago. People did not stay as long as our parents stayed at an employer, for example. They found an employer. Wow, I'm going to work for IBM. I start out of college or I start right out of high school and I work until I retire. And we just don't see that anymore. That's not what's happening. And there's a lot of generational reasons behind that. A lot of the younger generations saw parents dedicate themselves to their corporations, and then the corporations shut the door on their pension or laid them off before they were eligible or those kinds of things. So the younger generations are saying, wow, I don't feel comfortable, totally devoting myself to that employer. I want to work. I want to get what I need out of that employer. And then if I have a better opportunity that's going to fulfill me more, that's going to be higher paying, that's going to use my skills better, give me opportunity for advancement, those types of things, then those individuals will go on to those different jobs. And we were seeing that before the pandemic. I think we're seeing that even more so now, where people are interviewing, in the interviewing side, and we certainly should talk about that. When people are interviewing candidates for jobs, the candidates are interviewing the employer just as much and trying to find out if they're meeting their needs. So I think that's going to be really important. From an interviewing standpoint, just real quick, when you're asking questions about interviewing, when you're asking those interviewing questions, think about how you're going to screen the resumes that you get. Right now we're talking about getting resumes, but think about how you're going to screen those resumes that you have, how you're going to look through them and decide, yes, I want to talk to this person. No, I don't. Or maybe I want to talk to this person. What do those screening questions look like? Probably 4 or 5 screening questions you should ask. And then what questions are you going to ask in the actual interview? And those actual interview questions should be behavioral based and should be looking at how they are doing things. So ask for, tell me a time when, give me an example of, describe a situation where, those types of questions to find out about how that candidate behaved in the past. And it used to be that I would say that and say, so that'll help you understand how they're going to behave in the future, right? It's going to be a little bit predictive as far as how they're going to behave in the future. I think what we also need to be looking at is what work situations did they enjoy and what work situations did they not enjoy in those answers? What was challenging for them that they really liked the challenge? What was so challenging that they left the company? And start asking some of those questions that are around really what that person wants in a job. So when you ask those questions to determine what behaviors, if they have the behaviors, the knowledge, skill, and ability and behaviors that you want for that job, be sure to listen to those answers with a keen eye of, do we align on our values? Does this person, really want this job based on what they've done in the past and what they're telling me they like about the places that they've worked in the past, or what they're telling me they haven't liked? So be listening with that very, very sharp ear to hear those kinds of things.
Courtney, if I can interject just one more time.
Please.
I don't want to take up too much time, but what you said about behavioral questions, I think that is so spot on. Again, in the manufacturing sector, you may not find a person that's got the skills, or any sector, the skills that you want, but if they walk in the door, they interview, and they come across with a positive attitude, body language is probably pretty important from the standpoint now of how you interview, but that positive attitude and the eagerness to learn, I think are more important, because basically now you got to grow your own, no matter what it is. You got to grow your own, because you're not necessarily going to find those people that really have skills are working, and they're getting paid very well. So I think you're right on the money.
Yeah. Well, thank you, John. I think that's true. I was reading an article the other day and it really shocked me, because someone said, I think that 2-week notice, the people giving 2-week notices before they leave, is a thing of the past. I don't think that's going to happen anymore. So what are you experiencing? If everybody could jump in here and give me some feedback. Are you, when people are leaving, are they giving you 2 weeks notice, or are they just leaving for lunch and not returning?
Hi, Courtney. This is Todd Reed.
Hi, Todd.
I run a small business software company in Westminster, and I lost 4 people this year out of 8 in Colorado. 3 of the 4 that left gave no notice.
Yeah.
And, I'm talking to people who sometimes are 30, maybe right around 30 years old, and they've got some good computer skills and good communication skills, and they're getting $90,000 a year at their job, making more than I'm making,
Yeah.
So it's kind of tough. And I'm not sure how it's like you said earlier, it's put a lot of stress on the few of us that are remaining, trying to cover, and it's hard to figure out where am I going to get, my next people. I'm looking at outsourcing, accounting, and maybe a virtual admin or something like that.
Yeah.
To kind of fill the gaps.
Yeah, Todd, I'm so glad that thanks for sharing that. I'm so glad that you're looking at how to support the people who are left, because that can get into a very vicious cycle of, okay, we have all this work because these 4 people left, and now we have 4 of us to pick up the slack, and then you start losing some of those 4 people because they can't. It's just too much. They just are becoming overburdened. I spoke to an HR person who also does operations, and she is spending, 70 hours a week doing those 2 jobs. She only has time to spend about 40%, 35 to 40% of her time on HR, and they have over 200 employees.
Oh, wow.
And so what's happening is she's taking on more and more work and is unable to really do anything successfully. And with that kind of workload. And so that's something to keep in mind when people are leaving and other people are picking up the slack. You're going to start seeing maybe some performance diminish. And so understand that that's not necessarily because the employee doesn't want to do a good job, but it's truly they're being overburdened and they can't do a good job based on what they're being asked to do. So have some awareness of that as well. And Todd, it sounds like you certainly do. So I'm sorry you've lost so much of your workforce. That is just devastating. Is there anything that any question you want to have answered about that, or is there any way we can help you as a group here today?
Well, part of the problem is that we're all, running so hard that it's hard to even put together a hiring campaign.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of trying to be opportunistic when I see somebody shoots me an email and they do offshore or outsourced work. If we can take advantage of them, and so I'm talking to some of those that already have a lot of skills, and maybe I'll pay more, but it'll be hourly and only as needed, so it might be more efficient.
Yeah. Well, that is a tough situation. One of the things I want to talk about today is, where are the candidates? Where can we find the candidates, and how do we do that? When most people leave, we have to fill their spot, and it's just increasingly difficult to do that right now. Even with our tight labor market, honestly, the candidates, it's their market right now. They have all the options, and so as employers, our options are getting more and more limited. So I just say cast a big net. And one of the things that I started looking at was online options. So Connect in Colorado, if you're not familiar with that, that's actually a site through the Department of Labor. And you can put job postings up there. Of course, LinkedIn, Indeed, Craigslist, ZipRecruiter, we've all heard about that. Ladders, if this is a higher paying job. Obviously, Facebook, you can utilize Facebook and put some posts out there. Glassdoor. Job Spider was one that I was not that familiar with, but apparently it's a alternative to Craigslist. And so that's something you can do. But what I found was the fitssmallbusiness.com had over 30 sites that you could be looking at to put some advertisements up, online platforms where you could put some advertisements up for jobs. So I wanted to make sure to get that information to you, fitssmallbusiness.com, and you can go check that out. So looks like we just got a comment from Jasmine, and so be sure and check that out. They are doing some remote IT business. Okay, so that might help Todd if he has a question for that. So thank you very much for sharing that, Jasmine. 20 years experience. That's great. So be sure and check out fitssmallbusiness.com for more resources for job posting. And then I get struck by lightning because I'm an HR consultant. If I don't talk about this, it's regulations, right? So do not forget that as employers, you've got to follow the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act that came into effect on January 1st when you're posting jobs. So there are requirements, they're readily available to you. I'm happy to answer questions about that as well. But there are posting requirements where you have to post the range of pay for that position and a benefit summary. You have to post those internally if it's considered a promotion for anyone that works for you. So if somebody is working, maybe doing something like driving a vehicle, or they're providing customer service or something, and an office manager position comes available, they may or may not have the skills for it. But if they feel that's a promotional opportunity, then you've got to make sure that you're posting that promotional opportunity so that everyone in the company can see it. Because it's how the employee feels, not if you feel they're qualified. So there are certain regulations like that you need to be looking into and make sure that you're aware of. So be sure and do that. And if you have any questions, we can certainly talk about that. What about, sources outside of online postings? And really, you can find them anywhere. So I want you to start thinking about how you found customers. I took a sales course a while back, and it said there's a 3-foot rule. Anybody within 3 feet of you can start talking about what you do, or ask them what they do, or find out if there's any synergy between you. And it's the same kind of thing when you're looking for candidates. I remember when I was recruiting in Utah, I went to Utah and I would recruit all day, and then I would have dinner at night. And I found most of my candidates for jobs, most of the candidates that I wanted to pass on to be screened and to maybe be hired, were the servers at the restaurants that I was going to at night or over lunch. So don't be afraid to look outside the box. Even if you think, well, that particular industry, serving food, has nothing to do with what my business is. It doesn't, in my case, it doesn't have anything to do with HR consulting. Nope. Serving food doesn't have anything to do with HR consulting, but the attitude does. And the work ethic does, and the personality, of that individual wanting to make sure that I was given the top service in that restaurant does. And so you can certainly see that. Another example I have, I hired somebody. She had come in, she was on the maintenance staff of an apartment. This was many, many years ago that I lived in. And she came in to fix some plumbing in my bathroom. And so we just sat around and talked for a while, and I ended up hiring her, and she became a top executive at the insurance organization. So you never know where you're going to find somebody. You just don't know. So make sure that you're always looking. So you could be on a hiking trail or skiing or bowling. It doesn't matter. There's somebody that might be there that is definitely good for your business and good for your customers and your clients. So keep an open mind wherever you are. So this is another opportunity for us to kind of chat a little bit. I'd like to know a couple of different things, where you're finding good candidates right now. and I know that you may not be finding a huge quantity of candidates, but think about the last few high quality candidates that you've had. If it's been if it was online, let us know about that. What does that look like? Was it someplace where you were visiting? Tell us more about that. Are you finding any candidates? Maybe that's a better question.
Well, I'll make one comment. So I have several clients that have great difficulty in finding good people, and we have, again, in the manufacturing sector. So they have started to use technical recruiters that do the recruiting for them, and had some pretty good luck with that. Really going through all the different websites that you mentioned, didn't come up with anything, but. So you got to pay a price, okay?
Yeah.
So the reality is right now that to find a really good person or a good candidate, you're probably going to have to spend a little bit of money to do that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I was talking to somebody the other day who had the idea that maybe the candidates could pay to find a job. So in other words, it would be the true headhunter model where I'm going to invest in a headhunter to find me a job. And that's just not the case anymore. Right now, there's a couple of things with that. The headhunters model of the candidate paying them for a job really is starting to go away if it's not already gone. And that is because there are so many job openings that people really aren't having trouble finding a job that they might want. The other thing is, I think if candidates came to the door and said, I want to apply with you, and that organization said, great, go through our headhunter and you have to pay a fee, the candidates are going to walk away. They're not going to ever even consider that place as somewhere to work. So that was kind of an interesting discovery this week that was even being talked about in some circles. I'm seeing some comments about Terra staffing to new hires with an exclamation mark. So that sounds like that really helped. Kevin, it looks like you're finding through Indeed and ZipRecruiter about a 60-40% ratio. And then they also work with other job boards. That is true that a lot of job boards post on their job board, but then also will share it across the many platforms. I can't emphasize enough talking to your employees that you have a job opening and letting them know, because maybe they know somebody in the industry that's looking for work. The other thing you can do is talk to your contacts, right? Get the word out. Get the word out to your customers. Hey, we're looking for somebody. Make sure that you are advertising and marketing for your job openings, because that's what you're doing is you're becoming an employer of choice for people to come work with you. So make sure that you're doing that. And just as a break the myth, maybe it's not always about money. So I had a story told to me recently where there was an employee who was approached to go work somewhere else. And so they went to their boss and they said, you know what, I think I'm going to take this job. It's several $1,000s more a year. And so I think I'm going to take it. So the boss went to the CEO and they talked about it, and they came back and they made a counter offer that was not as high as the offer. And the boss said, I'm sorry, this is all we can do. And the employee said, you know what? I want to stay here. I thank you very much for giving me a little extra money. That really helps me out and helps my family out. And I need that. But I don't need as high a salary because I know what this culture is like. I know the autonomy that I get. I know the flexibility that I get. It's not always about the money. And as small business owners, sometimes we're competing with major organizations that have a lot of money. And so they can throw money at the problem. We can't always do that. We have to get a little more creative with our benefit package, our flexibility, what we're having them do, the autonomy that we're giving them, all of those things. So we need to get a little more flexible with those types of things. Any other comments before we move on?
Okay, I got one more, and I'm sorry if I'm talking so much.
Okay, John.
But you hit the right on the money from a standpoint of employer of choice. I think today that the culture is just as important as all the rest of the things that you talked about. And if particularly millennials and Hannah, I know I'm always referring to you as the millennial, but particularly millennials want to feel like they're contributing, that they do, their work contributes to the organization, and that they are listened to when they've got improvement ideas. And that's all part of the culture. I've got several clients that have just a wonderful culture, and the reason that they're successful is because they do those things. They take the time to listen to their employees, and they recognize them for their when they have good ideas.
Yeah, and thank you for that. That's a lot of what I'm going to be going into, actually. So you've opened the door to the next part of the presentation. So thank you, John. I appreciate that. You know, I like to say that this part of the conversation is where the rubber hits the road, if you will. Instead of talking about statistics and technology, we're going to start talking about things that we can actually control. What is within our control? So when we're looking at hiring, honestly, when I talk to my clients about hiring, they're discouraged. They're in some cases panicked over how do I find people, and what am I going to do, and how am I going to cover these responsibilities? And I just don't know what to do. I don't feel that I can control anything. Well, it's not possible for us to control things that are out of our control, if you will. It's not possible for us to control others, and we can't control processes or systems in a business that is not our own. So the most important question that you must ask yourself is what can I control? What is in our control? And then make changes to those things. So we may not be able to change an employee leaving or a job candidate who doesn't want to work with us, but we can control how we interact with that employee or with that job candidate. We can control the culture that we're setting up, and we can control how we communicate. So those are the things that I want to get into next. So, you know, as I said, there's a lot of things that we can do with these areas. Excuse me just a minute. Sorry about that. There's a lot of things that we can do in these specific areas. We've got to have dedication. We've got to have dedication to the employees that we have right now. As employees are leaving and as we're having trouble hiring people, we need to be thinking about how do we keep the ones that we have? How do we communicate with them? How do we engage them and keep them?
Ron.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I thought I was on mute. I do apologize.
Oh, no, that's okay. That's all right. So what we want to do is we want to walk through some of these areas that we can control. I was thinking about this. I went to the bank on Saturday, and I've done this for the last 13 years. Saturday morning, you know, I go to the bank. And I drove up, and there was literally a sign that said, this branch is temporarily closed. And so I got online and I started looking around, and there were other branches that were temporarily closed. And I had this just aching feeling of, I knew they were short-staffed. I bet they're going to close this branch down. That means that I'm going to have to drive a really long way to still bank at this bank. Maybe I need to start thinking about changing banks. What should I do? As a customer, I'm having this thought process, right? Now, as it turned out, the bank was closed simply because of a shortage on staff on Saturdays. That's not what the sign said.
Yeah, make yourself at home.
The sign said, and Kevin, you're still not muted. The sign said that, you know, they were temporarily closed. I didn't know if they were coming back. I didn't know when they were coming back. So I had to call to find out. So as we're working with short staff, don't forget about the customers and any kind of signs that you have to put up or communication you have to put up regarding being short-staffed, so that the customers know exactly what's going on. So be transparent in that communication. The other thing that brought to mind was, how many times do we miscommunicate with our employees, causing them to consider leaving? You know, we have that within our control. We can certainly communicate better with our employees about the situation. and the long-term effects of maybe employees leaving, or the I guess requirements or expectations we have for them during the interim of what's going on with their jobs, the jobs that they're assuming from other people who have left, and having that kind of communication with them to make sure that they know exactly what those expectations are and what your best guess is as far as how long they're going to have to do 2 jobs, right? Or how long they're going to have to pick up these extra responsibilities. So make sure that as you're seeing yourself being short-staffed, that you're working with your staff and communicating with them on a really deep level. So what are the job candidates thinking? They're thinking it's their market. They're looking for flexibility, work-life balance, a clear vision for the organization, and really a mental health focus. And they want meaningful work. There are more jobs than employees. The employees can pick and choose where they want to work, and they can come and go really as they please. In the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs 2020 report, they were saying that flexibility, work-life balance, a clear vision where policies are clearly communicated and communicated well, and a mental health focus were really those top things that the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report said were the most important things to employees. And when we're talking about flexibility, it could be remote work. It could be they remote work 3 days a week and they come into the office 2 days a week. It could be that their hours are flexible, right? It's breaking all the norms that we've had of that. Okay, you're going to come in at 8, you're going to leave at 5. You're going to have a break for lunch. You can take a couple of rest breaks during the day. But I want to know exactly what you're doing. I want to see you at your desk and I want to see what you're doing, right? We've got to become more flexible with these job candidates. So providing that flexibility of work to them is going to be really important. The mental health focus, there are employee assistance programs that are out there that you as a small business owner can have access to. There are businesses that will provide that for you. The county mental health agencies will also help. So if you have an employee that has a mental health issue or a mental health crisis is going on, please be sure and have those types of numbers available to you. The suicide hotline, suicide prevention hotline, excuse me, those numbers need to be readily available to you at all times right now. We did see a spike in suicides. We saw a spike in mental health needs that are going on in the community. So be sure and have those numbers available to you. When we get down to meaningful work, they're looking beyond the job. They're looking beyond the paycheck. You know, get them involved in things that make a difference. Let them understand how their being there is going to be important to your business. We talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I saw something come across my desk from SHRM the other day that included belonging. So it wasn't just DEI, it was also B on the end, which was belonging, because that's really what people are looking for here. They want to feel like they belong. So make sure that you're providing that to them. And then be sure to articulate why you want them to be involved in that. What is the purpose? What purpose can they bring to the table, or what skill set can they bring to the table that will really speak to the purpose of that part of the organization? So here are some things that I'm seeing as important markers for employers to do right now. There is a labor shortage, yet businesses are not responding to job candidates. They're just not saying anything. So be sure to respond to them. They could be a customer or a client. They could know someone who's a customer or a client, or they could be referring people to you. So what you want to do is you want to say, okay, somebody sends me their resume. They know that they sent it to me, and it's not just a blind ad, but they know that it came to me. I want to respond back to say that I got it and I'm looking at it, or I got it and they're, not as competitive as other qualified applicants or whatever, but communicate with them to let them know that thank you very much. You appreciate their resume, you appreciate their interest in your business, and here's the status of that resume or that application that they have. Be sure to respond back. And that helps with the second one, which is building trust. You want to be consistent. You want to be transparent. You want to demonstrate your integrity, right? You're going to do what you say you will. So if you say, thank you for interviewing with me, I'm going to get back to you by Friday, get back to them by Friday and let them know, even if it is, ooh, we need a little more time, I'll have to talk to you next week, but just let them know what's going on. Okay. Be open with each other, honor boundaries, honor that applicant's boundaries or your employees' boundaries, and make sure that they do have that work-life balance. Communicate honestly, appropriately, and frequently. So make sure that you're building trust through communication as well. Articulate how your business meets their needs. You need to be able to articulate how your business is going to give them the flexibility they want, or the work-life balance, or that you truly honor and respect a mental health focus within your business. Make sure to give examples of how your business will meet those needs for that applicant. And again, you need to talk to them about what are their priorities, what are their needs, what does this look like for them, and how is it going to best help them to work for you? How does it help them achieve their goals if they work at your business? And that's really what you want to do. You want to talk about that, before the interview, during the interview, after the interview, especially if this is a candidate that you really want to hire. You want to make sure that you're talking about how you can help them achieve their goals just as much as they can help you achieve yours throughout the entire interview and selection process. And then build an employer brand, which is, be their employer of choice. The question was posed, what is your employer value proposition, right? If you were to look at your business and you were to say, okay, from a customer, I know what our value proposition is. What is it to employees? What value are we bringing employees? What is our value proposition to employees? And that's really what I want to talk about here. What is that employer brand value proposition that you have, that you think, wow, this is who can come work for us because we really meet their needs, and this is the value that we can bring their life? Any thoughts on that? While you're thinking about that, what about just your process for handling job candidates? Is everybody comfortable with the process they're walking through, or can we answer any questions about that, or talk about a job candidate process, that hiring process itself?
I've been focusing a lot on automation. That seems to be the way to go to cast a larger net for finding recruits or candidates rather. So
Okay.
A lot of integration of IT tools to kind of streamline all the steps.
Yeah, I think that's really important. It also helps if you automate, right? It helps you be able to send out responses and get communication quickly back to them. The whole automation steps. If this happens, then we can send out this type of response. And so tagging and different things that you can do
Absolutely,
to make sure that you can get that done. Yeah, that's great. That's a great tip. Automation. Perfect. What are some other tips, other success stories from hiring process?
This is Jasmine. Can I say something?
Absolutely.
Thanks, Courtney. So my husband and I are a recent startup corporation, and we are doing C2C or B2B right now. Basically what that is corporate to corporate. So we're providing remote technical services to other businesses and other corporations. I'm in this class today to learn how to hire other subcontractors because we have an LLC, but my husband is the only employer and the only employee. Everyone underneath him is a subcontractor, and we will be filing a tax status of S Corp in the very near future.
Okay.
So We are looking to do business with other businesses so that we can keep everyone's costs down so they don't have to worry about like employee taxes or payroll or health benefits or anything like that when they try to bring someone on. And we're also doing a wide array of remote IT services because, like I said, I bring about 20 years of IT experience to the table. And my husband does a lot of remote sales, and he can close thousands of dollars in one sitting with a limited amount of time.
Okay.
So this is what we're doing. So this is why I'm in the class today. And I know it's kind of off topic, but I'm learning from an expert, which is you. So
Well, thank you, Jasmine. And then the only thing that I want to point out, and this wasn't something that I was going to talk about today, but we certainly can just take a little bit of a side road here, and that is employee versus independent contractor. So the point, the point that Jasmine is making is absolutely correct. When you hire an independent contractor, there's a lot of the taxes and all of those things that you don't have to pay. As employers, there are specific guidelines as to when we can hire an independent contractor versus an employee. And the saying that I always go by, a friend of mine is an employment attorney, and she said this one time when we were presenting together, and it is, everyone is born an hourly employee. And what she means by that is, everyone you hire, you should first say, okay, they're an hourly employee, and then say, okay, now wait, if they meet these qualifications, they can be a salaried employee. And if we don't want to control their behavior, if we don't want to tell them where to go, when to be there, what to do, we don't want to train them, we don't want to have any kind of influence over that, we just want to say, here's the result we want, and this is the date we want it by, then that might be an independent contractor. Or if you're not going to be paying them necessarily by the hour, but maybe by the project, or you're going to be not reimbursing any of their expenses. You're not going to be telling them that they have to wear a certain uniform, so you're not going to be purchasing uniforms for them, for example. Those types of things. So you don't have any financial control. They either could lose money or could make money based on the project that they're doing for you. If they take longer time than they thought, they might lose money. If they take less time, they might make money, but that's totally up to them. And so you don't have any financial control over them, and they have an opportunity to have a profit or loss based on the relationship. Then that is, not really a lot of financial control. So that might be an independent contractor. If you have the third factor is relationship, and that is, what kind of relationship do you have? Is it a contract? Is it for a short period of time? Is it for a certain deliverable? Is it just when you have an overload of clients? Those types of things, that relationship, and it's a contract-driven relationship, then that might be an employee, independent contractor. If you're paying them individually, you're not paying a company, you're paying them individually, and you're paying them on a regular basis, like a weekly paycheck, or every other week, or whatever that might be, and that's the kind of relationship you have, then that might be an employee. So there's a lot of factors to consider in how you hire a worker, whether or not they're an independent contractor or an employee, and then if they're an employee, whether or not you pay them hourly or you pay them salary. And all of those considerations have regulations attached to them. So it's not a decision that we as employers can just make kind of just on our own. We've got to be looking at the regulations and making sure that we're following that, so we stay out of big fines and other monetary problems. Michaela said that she would love any and all tips as a new small business getting ready to make our first hire. Well, congratulations, Michaela. That's exciting. I think, we all remember our first employee that we hired, and just, it's so exciting, and yet it's terrifying. So I totally understand that. One of the things that I would talk to you about is employee versus independent contractor. And so we've kind of just briefly gone through that. Make sure when you're hiring somebody that you know what you want them to do. So you have that understanding of, okay, here are our company goals. Here are the positions we need to meet those company goals. Here are the roles and responsibilities and expectations we want for that person. And now we can know what the knowledge, skills, and abilities are that you need to make sure that those roles, responsibilities, and expectations are met. And so at that point, you can start writing a job description, and you can write a job ad. And there's a whole bunch of steps there. So Michaela, I'm going to invite you to get in touch with Hannah and get an appointment with me so we can talk through that, because I certainly want to help you through that process, and it can get a little overwhelming to start out with your first employee. So congratulations to you. All right, well, let's move on. How am I doing on time, Hannah? I'm doing okay, right?
Yeah, you're doing great.
Okay, all right, thank you. So let's talk about employees. As we've talked about, they really want flexible options for work. This one I thought was really interesting. They want to have employers reimagine how productivity is measured. So I mentioned earlier in the course how employees, they need to be managed on results, especially remote employees, because when you can't stand over them or walk by their desk or check on what they're doing and make sure that they're doing it, you've got to have another way to measure their productivity. And what you don't want to do is micromanage that individual. There have been companies that have signed up for certain software where people can be sitting at their desk at home and their camera is on so that you can see that they're sitting at their desk and working. Now, Hannah, that's what you would like to do, right? Is have someone stare at you while you're at your house working to make sure that you're at your desk working. No, nobody wants that. Nobody wants to feel like they're a zoo animal, right? That's not where we want to be. We don't want to be the fish in the bowl. We actually want to be humans. What we have to do is we have to rethink how we're managing productivity and how we're measuring productivity. So my suggestion is always look at results and timelines. You want to be very, very clear with your employees on how you're going to measure productivity and what that looks like. So I need this by Friday at noon. These are the things that I need to be included in this report. If you have any questions, please let me know. It's Monday. I'm going to check in with you on Wednesday and make sure that it's going okay, right? That person has autonomy to put things together, to get it, pulled together, to get it finished and completed on time, and also knows that their supervisor or their manager is available to have the discussion if they have any problems, and that there's going to be a midweek check-in. Perfect. There's going to be a midweek check-in. So now we know that, and so I know that I can get, a certain amount of work done by that benchmark and then finish it up by Friday. So those types of things need to be put into place, and you need to have those conversations with your employees. Make it a dialogue. Actually talk to them and say, this is how I want to measure your productivity. How do you feel about that? And make it a give and take. A lot of times these employees have great ideas with regard to how productivity could be measured with their job. After all, they're the subject matter expert of what they're doing. So be sure and talk to them about that. Working with a diverse team. People really want to have a more diverse team, and that can be from many, many aspects of that particular team. So it can be a knowledge level, it can be a skill level, it can be diversity in culture, it can be diversity in ethnicity. All those things are important within the workplace to make sure that you've got those things, and it's going to become even more important as time goes on. Other surveys that I read, that survey was from the Talent Accelerator as part of Citrix work for a 2035 project. Other surveys that I've looked at talk about physical and financial safety. So we just went through a pandemic. A lot of people had some financial insecurity and they were very concerned about that. So financial security is extremely important to employees right now. The other part is physical security. We are seeing more and more violence, there's more and more violence in the workplace, and those types of things. People are feeling, really uncomfortable being in the workplace, so they feel safer at home, and so that could be a motivator for people wanting to work remotely. They also are concerned about the pandemic still and what's going on, and what the breakthrough infections are doing, and how that's working in the workplace, and all of those things. So there's a lot of things to be considered for physical and financial safety. So this gets into a little bit of what John was talking about and mentioned earlier with culture. And I feel that this is so important. When employees become disengaged, they leave. I mean, the bottom line is if they become disengaged, they leave. And there are many ways to engage employees. I'm going to list some, but not all. But I wanted to talk to you about these because employees that do not feel valued will become disengaged. They're not going to want to stay in the workplace. They are going to want to move on to a place where they feel valued and where they feel that they really are contributing to a common goal and that they have a purpose. And if they don't feel valued, they don't feel that they have a purpose, and they're going to want to move on, right? Employees need compassion. We are moving very, very quickly in small business. We do, we have so many hats that we wear. And sometimes we forget to just stop, take a breath and say, hey, how are you doing? I saw that you got a little frustrated with that customer. Totally understand it. That customer is pretty frustrating. Let's have a conversation about it. Are you okay? Start the conversation with, are you okay? And then talk about the constructive coaching of how you can handle that difficult customer in the future or what needs to happen. But make sure that that employee is okay. Give them compassion, because they have been through the last year and a half, almost 2 years now, just like all of us have. And so they need compassion and know that you care about them as a person. Engage in meaningful dialogue with your employees. Create a culture that welcomes feedback regarding workplace issues, as well as mental health, as well as how are things going outside of the workplace. You don't want to start gossiping or having people standing around or on Zoom, chatting all day, but you want to allow them to have that opportunity to connect with other humans, especially if they're working at home. And so, meaningful dialogues sometimes are, how's it going? Hey, you got a new puppy. Cool. Let's look at the new puppy. Okay. Now that's fun. All right. Now we're going to get to work. Right. But acknowledge them and have meaningful dialogues about them as a person, because what we're trying to do here is keep them engaged in the business and let them know that we care about them, not just as a worker, but as a human being. Right. So that's what that value, compassion, and meaningful dialogues all tie into. Now, actively listening to an employees, obviously they want to know that you hear them. They want to know that their ideas are heard. They want to know that you feel comfortable around them and you can ask them questions, but you will also listen to their ideas. Sometimes employees bring crazy ideas that there's no way that could happen. I was in a brainstorming session for one of the places where I worked, and one of the employees said, we should get a helicopter. Okay, what a fun idea. That's a really fun idea. Too bad we don't have enough money to do that, but what a great idea. That would be really fun. What could we do with a helicopter? Okay, that's really great. Now let's move on to the next thing. Acknowledging the idea and saying, wow, that's really fun, is important, because you're listening to them, you're hearing them, and they feel as though they're seen, which is the next step. And that is, make sure that they know that they are seen, that you see them, that you sense and you can identify when they're having a tough day and when they need some help and they need maybe an extra pat on the back or an extra phone call to say, hey, how are you doing? You didn't seem right in that last meeting. I want to make sure you're okay. And so they need to feel that. And your employees, again, this whole package is, let's have conversations with our employees so that meaningful dialogue, and they feel the compassion, and they feel the value, and they know you're listening to them, and they know you're seeing them. This is going to help keep those employees engaged. So what are you doing to keep your employees engaged, and are they giving you feedback that they appreciate it? And maybe we're ready to move on, but I think this is one of those things. Be thinking about how you can engage with your employees in these ways, and then think about some things that you need to change. You don't need to change 100% every day. You just need to change 1% every day. So maybe it's reaching out to an employee today and saying, last week you were in that meeting and I was kind of concerned about you and I want to have a conversation. Can we talk about that? And reaching out to them and just doing one of those things a day, just to make sure that the employees know. And don't forget the handwritten note or the email, just saying thank you for all you do. Make sure that you're doing that as well, because that's important. So let's move on to culture. A workplace culture is shared values, belief systems, and attitudes, and the set of assumptions that people in a workplace share. So it's really important to have, that culture set up so that everybody feels comfortable with it. And how do I do that when I'm working with clients? we talk about, workplace values. What are the values that you agree to in this workplace? And then discuss acceptable and unacceptable behaviors that might represent those particular values. And then come up with tenets or guiding principles or guiding statements on how people will work with each other. And then implement those tenets so all are aware of what's going on. So that looks like a kind of a longer meeting, maybe a 2-3 hour meeting, where you actually go through each one of these steps and you develop these tenets so that everyone agrees to it, and then everyone can hold each other accountable for following these tenets. And it's an unbelievably easy thing to write on a slide like this. What's fun is actually working it through with a team. And maybe that team gets along really well, and maybe they don't. But by the end of that meeting, when you come out with those tenets and you say, okay, this is how we're going to implement it, and this is how we're going to be holding each other accountable to make sure that we're all following the agreed upon tenets, the way that we are going to work with each other, we're all following that. This is a very, very powerful exercise that I've done several times, and just, it's amazing to see the results that can happen. So how are your cultures in small business? There's a distinct culture in small business as opposed to a larger business. I love it. I grew up in a furniture store, a family retail furniture store that my grandfather started out of a gas station. And so I grew up in a retail furniture store and then moved on to work in a corporate America, an insurance organization. And those were two totally different cultures. I enjoyed both. Obviously, I enjoyed the small business a little bit more, which is why I'm back working with small businesses now. But what kind of culture is going on in your workplace right now, and how do you maintain that culture? Or what problems have you run into with maybe the pandemic and working remotely with your culture? Courtney, it's almost lunchtime and you're asking us questions. We'd rather just have you talk, please. Okay, and that's fine. That's fine. I would just ask, if you don't have some kind of tenant set up that the employees have agreed to and that they have committed to upholding, that you consider doing that. Because I think that what you're going to find is that helps really drive the culture if you have those tenants. One of the clients that I worked with was in a restaurant, and what they decided to do was they took a rolling pin. They took 3 rolling pins and put their values on the rolling pins and then put them on the wall. And so every time somebody comes in, they see these 3 rolling pins that describe the values that they're going to uphold each time that they come in the building. And they did that many, many years ago. And I was just fascinated by it. And it really, really worked, because the employees started saying, wait a minute, one of our values is X and you're not living up to that value. One of our values is leaving it at the door, and you're bringing all of your personal stuff in here today and really distracting us from getting work done and serving our customers. So I think it's important to set up those tenants. Okay, communication. So in the communication, and we're just narrowing it down here to the end of the presentation, but effective communication is when a message is sent and understood accurately. So this is pretty easy. You want to be respectful to people. You want to listen actively to understand. How many times do we listen to somebody with something in the back of our head of, oh, I know what I'm going to say. I know how I'm going to rebut that. Oh yeah, we don't even hear what else they say. We just are listening to really respond versus listening to understand. So with your employees, make sure that you're listening to understand, just as you would with your customers. Pay attention to their nonverbal cues. Make sure you're watching body language. It's hard on Zoom, but not impossible, right? You can't necessarily see if you can see if they're kind of fading off camera, somehow you can see that. You can see if they're yawning or if they're just sitting back and staring at the ceiling or whatever they might be doing. You can see that, but sometimes you can't tell that they're really upset or that they're really in pain or that something else is going on. So that's why you've got to open that communication, but do watch for nonverbal cues, even on Zoom. Be personable and be empathetic. So all of those things will help us better communicate with our employees. Are there any questions that we want to talk about? Communication, anything with hiring, I guess my question is, what are you taking away from today's session? And what do you want to implement? Or what are you questioning? Like, I don't want to do that. Why do I have to do that? So give me some feedback just on the information that I shared today, if you would.
And I guess the key point that you made about being the employer of choice, and employer of choice just because of the culture. I know from my personal experience and from the clients that I deal with that are successful, that if they do build a culture based on all the things you talked about, which I think you've covered them really well, they're going to have any trouble recruiting people. Their employees are going to tell their friends and their relatives that working at XYZ company is like the best thing that ever happened, and they'll have people lining up. So I always said when I ran operations that I wanted people to be dying to be able to come in and work in my environment or our environment. So thank you for all of your comments.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Any questions or anything that you want clarified? Okay.
Excuse me, Courtney, Mary.
Yes. Hi, Mary.
I just wanted to comment. I really liked your remarks about culture, and I think that probably is an exercise well worth doing, because when you first mentioned culture, I was sitting here thinking that's not something that we can just create on our own as small business owners. You have to have involvement from your employees. So I really appreciated your remarks on that. I jotted down as quickly as I could. Thank you.
No, absolutely. Absolutely, Mary. And I know that Hannah, if I'm right, the recording will go out to everybody who is registered, right? And so you'll see that. And typically I think I send a PDF of the slides, but I can do that too. I'll send you a PDF of the slides as well. So you'll have that. And then if you have any questions.
Oh, Courtney, I think you're muted.
I got muted there. There we go. That's okay. So I would just say, if you have any questions, Mary, while you're going through that, just give me a call. Happy to sit down and chat with that. I'm sorry, chat with you about that whole process.
Thank you.
All right. If there's not any other questions or comments, I really appreciate you being here and spending some time with me today. I know that your time is very valuable, and the SBDC wants to provide programming that's helpful to you. So I look forward to seeing your comments back on how we can provide information to you and the information that's of interest to you. So with that, I'll turn it over to Hannah. And thanks again, Hannah, for letting me be here today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Courtney. This was all so helpful. And I know it's something that we can all revisit as we go through, this next season of hiring and what that looks like. So really helpful. It will be coming to you all later this afternoon or tomorrow in a recording. And would encourage you all to check out our website as well if you want to talk with Courtney more in depth about your specific situation with hiring or any questions that you have around that. You can email me and I can help you get connected there. And you can always reach out with questions, whether they're HR related or other business issues that you're facing. So feel free to reach out and know that we are here to support you. And we thank you all for joining us, and we'll let you get on with your afternoon.
Thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks, everyone.